Thanks, everybody. Welcome to the late afternoon. Demand Gen, ABM, and its impact on company goals. So kind of a mouthful, but we're going to really take a strategic look at how ABM is becoming a central part of not only demand gen, but how companies are really driving growth in entering new markets, and how great folks like our panelists, who I'll introduce in a second, are really using ABM strategies and approaches, tools and tactics to bring the company into the next level. So I am, just as actually, before I introduce you guys, super quick context. How many people in the room are working on ABM programs? Okay, so majority, I would say. How many have been working on ABM for more than 3 years? Okay, so a good group. All right, you guys are up in front, so you're the more aggressive ones. We like that, so we may call on you. But it is amazing how fast ABM has taken off in recent years. And as you can see up here, there are some good reasons. Our customers want it. They're tuning out anything that's not relevant, personalized, targeted to them and their needs. Sales absolutely is demanding it. Why isn't marketing more helpful? Why isn't marketing more relevant? You know, stop giving me stuff that's not important. And our own marketing leadership, our teams are demanding greater and greater impact. And of course, it works. So the early pioneers over the last really 10, 15 years have had incredible results using account-based marketing to drive strategic growth. And so there's been this incredible wave. But what that's meant, and I'm sure a lot of folks here are feeling it, is there are a lot of questions and uncertainties about some of the strategic basics of ABM. What are we trying to accomplish really? I mean, of course, we're all trying to increase revenue, but what else? How do we organize? How can technology help? What accounts should we focus on? So we're going to dig into some of those big issues, and we've got a fantastic group of panelists up here. What I'm going to do is introduce each one, ask you to say very quick about your company, your role, and your ABM program. So super quick. So first off, Michelle Lero, VP of Demand Generation at Boston's own PTC.
Yeah, hi, so Michelle Lero. I head demand generation for PTC. As you mentioned, we're headquartered here in Boston, just across the water in the Seaport District. PTC is a very large global software company in the industrial IoT and augmented reality space. We also have a long legacy of CAD software and PLM software as well. So we're about 6,500 employees globally. We market literally around the world. Most of our programs are in 12 different languages. In terms of the ABM journey, I joined the company about 2.5 years ago. The company had made some efforts in that direction, and since I've joined, we've been trying to move forward there and make incremental progress. But at the scale that we are, as you can imagine, it's a little bit challenging to roll out these types of programs on a global level when you have a sales organization that numbers into the thousands. Some of the orchestration of this can be very challenging.
Excellent, great. Michelle, thank you. Daniel. So, Daniel Sims, Senior Director, Demand Gen at Redpoint Global, another local.
Hi, yeah, we're based in Wellesley in Massachusetts here, and my role, I'm part of the marketing group, and we are responsible for account-based marketing, amongst other channels and strategies that we execute. Redpoint is, we supply a customer engagement hub, so looking at a CDP, an analytics layer, and then ultimately an orchestration layer that we sell into the B2C market. So brands that you think of as retailers, FinServe, travel and hospitality, brands like that, anyone with an end consumer is really where we play. Our ABM program really started life as a very, very long list of accounts that I would suggest is probably best described as our target market in its entirety. And over the past year or so, year and a half, we've worked very, very hard to whittle that down to a very much more manageable list where we can really get some runs on the board.
Great. Daniel, thank you. And then finally, last but certainly not least, Nick Wassenberg, Director of Global Marketing at Digital River, not a Boston native.
That's right. I'm in town from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have people all over and offices all over the world. Digital River is a e-commerce enabler or accelerator, I would say. So if you want to sell goods or digital software online, we can help you go to new markets faster, more efficiently, and more effectively. In terms of our ABM story or our maturation curve, we are getting there. I've been at Digital River for about 8 months now. We started with some content that wasn't clicking, so we're in a kind of transition phase. We're also in a pretty significant transition phase in terms of our company positioning, what that means for our TAM, and so forth. So I head up the ABM efforts that are in a state of change, as well as the other inbound and event programs that we're running.
Great. All right, Nick, thank you. So I'm going to run through a set of questions and touch on some of these more strategic and organizational issues and learn from the experts here. So the first question that many of us face, and you guys have already alluded to some changes, is which accounts? Which accounts do we want to focus on? Now, ABM, we know almost by definition, is about targeting investment in the accounts that matter most. But how do we define that? You know, most of us have some version of an 80-20 rule. We've got a relatively smaller number of accounts that account for disproportionate revenue. It's where we innovate, we develop new solutions. But one of the great promises of ABM is that we can scale it. We can cover hundreds or thousands of accounts. So Michelle, I'm going to ask you first, how do you pick which accounts to focus on and why?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, this has been a few years' journey for us. So when we first started, if you look at this triangle here, some of our pilots were sort of at the tip of the triangle there. It was, you know, let's start small with our pilots and grow from there. Some of our initial programs were literal one-to-one ABM programs. I have some team members here in the audience that actually worked on those programs. It was a literal one-to-one. We were creating content and programs for one very specific account, working with one specific account team on that account. From there, we grew it. We started getting more into the 100 accounts, 200 accounts. That we really determined, it was a combination of sort of like three factors. First would be geo, right? We're headquartered in North America. We started North America English because frankly, that was just the easiest to get going. Other factors were industry, which industries had the highest propensity to buy or were the best fit for the addressable market we were going after. And then finally, the third one, which you can't overestimate enough, is willingness of the sales team, frankly. We have some specialized sales teams within our organization. We really had to find sales teams that understood what we were trying to do and were actually on board with it and were willing to be a partner with us and a collaborator with us on the project.
No, that's great.
That was also key in our decision about which accounts we went after, particularly in the early phases.
Seems like good accounts. Sales isn't interested.
Yeah.
Take them off the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a big fan of that. Great. Daniel, talked about how you pick accounts.
I'll echo your thoughts on the salesperson marketing alignment, because a lot of what I've seen in my career is salespeople coming to us and saying, this is a great account, this is a great brand, we'd love this on our website, and for no other reason other than simply that brand has money, for instance, or has the salesperson perceives they have a need, which is not always necessarily the case. And so the way we pick accounts now is we've dropped that very, very long laundry list of accounts down to a very small manageable number. That number's in the hundreds. And what we do is we look at internal information that we know about that account from our own ecosystem, and then couple that with what we can find out from external sources. And by coupling it, we can then identify when someone perhaps is in the market for our products, and from there we put them onto our account list. And we absolutely do not hesitate to take someone off our account list if we don't think they're interested in our products anymore, for two reasons. One, we don't want to waste resources, but more importantly, we don't want to burden that account with information that they're not interested in receiving. So we have a rotating list that we review weekly, but really, we take a few off every week, but it's more monthly that we look at the wholesale changes.
Okay. Good. Okay, so be noting down questions to follow up on, because I'm going to keep going here. I want to talk about strategic alignment. One of the things when ABM as a relatively new discipline, we get really caught up in the tools and the tactics, but the great promise is that it helps us go into new markets. It helps us sell new solutions. So I'm curious, again, revenue's in the middle, as it is here. We're all trying to accelerate revenue growth. But as business leaders, when we're leading ABM, we're trying to support what are some of those other strategic priorities of the business. Most of our companies are really changing what we sell, who we sell to, what markets. So Nick, I'm going to ask you, what other corporate objectives are you looking at as part of your ABM program?
Yeah, for us, even though we have a number of customers and a lot of our revenue comes from our existing base, our ABM programs are solely focused at net new logos, so to speak. So
yeah.
that is one critical piece of our growth model as a company, is to win new business and then grow that organically over time, the people selling things online. How it ties into our go-to-market distinctly is, I think it allows us to either take, as we heard from the panelists, the input from sales and or signals that we can pick up from the market to say, when is this account actually going to be in the market for what we do? We see our customers and our prospects really go through cycles of growth in new markets. We want to be there when they're ready to tap into what we're doing. So it's timing for us. I think strategic timing for these key accounts for us is one of the biggest ways that we use ABM today.
Oh, that's great. And Daniel, what about you? How's the ABM program aligned to the overall corporate strategy?
Similar to you, we are tasked with winning new logos, and so that's definitely part of any marketing tactic that we execute. But I also add, though, that we look to test a lot of messaging into market with our ABM strategy. So we'll think of a message, we'll test it with a small account list, and then as we look to further define that in its entirety, we will then refine it over time within our account-based marketing strategies, and then we can execute that within other markets and strategies.
Oh, good. All right, next topic. We've already touched on sales and how important working with sales is. We've obviously been talking about that all day long at the event today. Interestingly, some research that ITSMA did last year with the ABM Leadership Alliance, looking at sales collaboration, found that it's pretty good for most ABM programs. One of the challenges is, how do you maintain it through the entire process? So selecting accounts usually we're quite good at, but sometimes along the way, we go our way, they go theirs. So Michelle, I'm going to ask you, how is that going at PTC? How are you ensuring that ongoing collaboration?
So meetings, and more meetings.
Right.
We are looking for ways. I think the word I've heard over and over again at the conference today is orchestration.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to orchestrate at scale has frankly been really challenging. Today we're doing it mostly through people and process. If you think of people, process, technology, I think most of this today is being tackled through people and process and lots of meetings. I joke, but seriously, there's lots of meetings.
Right.
I think we're all trying to figure out how do we pull all three of those things together, people, process, and that key technology piece. How do you use not just technologies for the marketing piece, but technologies to orchestrate? For example, if you've got a key set of accounts you're going after and it says, well, if this executive visits this page, we want to trigger off a direct mail piece to be sent. Well, the great news is there's tools that can do that, and we're using those types of tools. But then we also need a sales rep to make a phone call. We need the FedEx data that said it was delivered so that the sales rep can make the phone call at the right time, et cetera. Trying to orchestrate all those pieces together has proven very challenging.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but it's going to take time. So I think we're going to see incremental progress over time.
Okay.
But
that'll be
it's certainly
you'll be busy.
It's not going to happen tomorrow, but we'll get there. Yeah.
Great. Nick, what about you? What about on your end, the sales and marketing collaboration?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind for me is we as an organization as a sales organization and really a marketing organization are very good at disqualifying things. so I don't know if that's a positive, but it's a trait that we have. And so we are on the same page in terms of what makes for an account that we're prospecting into that is not a fit for further programming. So then we can move on to the next one. So I think we're doing a good job of collaborating there. When we get into the nuts and bolts of things like the SDR team's messaging, the field sales messaging, the marketing messaging. I think we have a ways to go and could probably learn some things from what Michelle mentioned, kind of the making sure the resources are available and the messaging and the assets are available for the team readily and that they're actually being used. That's an orchestration piece that I think we can improve on.
Okay, good. Okay, so more to work on there. All right, now we get to the fun and creative part, right? How do we actually engage with prospects, with buyers? The reality here, a little bit more data, just as context, our customers and our prospects are not casting a wide net. We always talk with ABM, you know, fish with spears, not with nets, right? Focus in. But our customers are doing the same thing. They're typically only looking at 2 or 3, maybe 4 providers to consider. The incumbent is usually one of them. And so we really need to work hard to break through. So I'm going to ask everybody on the panel, what's working? I mean, there's this plethora of tactics and tools. We've seen direct mail with a comeback, and we know, with sales and SDRs. So what's working best? Nick, let me start with you.
Yeah, sometimes the form factor matters a lot for us in our specific market. We are trying to reach marketing folks as well as a finance persona, so matching up the form factor with the persona is actually important for us, and that means for marketers it's more of an infographic. For the finance folks, it's more of a spreadsheet treatment and that kind of thing as a call to action, as something that helps them engage. So I think matching up the persona with the actual flavor and type of asset seems like it might be fundamental, but I think it's shown to be really important for us.
Yeah, sort of easier said than done in practice, right?
True.
In persona work, yeah. Daniel, what about you?
For us, I mean, ABM promises the more targeted approach, right? So the more targeted we can be as we look to execute campaigns, the better. I do echo your thoughts, though, on making sure that targeting is reflective of the persona. We have, 2 distinct personas, and they think very, very different from one another, the data and the marketer, data guy and the marketing guy. And so we have to, make sure we treat them differently with respect to what they're going to consume. So that's, and all the channels that you'd expect, There's no golden ticket.
No magic bullets here, unfortunately, right? Okay, does anybody have magic bullets? Okay, Michelle.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything that's been said. There's the influencers and the buyers. One of the techniques that my team in particular has been very good about is using the right channels. So while we may reach, say, manager level and director level through digital marketing efforts, what we'll do is then set it up to say whether or not the C-level person has engaged with us. Now we're going to send them a direct mail piece. We've seen other people from the buying team engaging. We have not seen the C-level or VP level engaging. Let's send them direct mail or invite them to an upcoming event, something that's a little bit higher touch, because the higher up the food chain you go, you really need to have that higher touch type of activity. One thing I wanted to call out, just to break it up, it's very specific, but I just absolutely loved it, so I feel like, and the person on my team who did it is here today, so I have to call this out. When we did those one-to-one programs, we actually took it so far as to write an entire series of blog posts and host a webinar for one very specific. They did not know we were doing that, and then we teed it up. We pre-wrote emails for the sales rep to say, hey, I don't know if you saw this new blog post series that we did, but it touches on your exact problem. And so the account said, boy, you guys really get us. You really get our challenges. Obviously not scalable, but if you're going after a very high value, very high target account, I can say that was something that definitely got attention.
No, I love that. Actually, so I'm going to ask you guys, what's a favorite tactic maybe amidst the multi-channel approach? Nick, what jumps to mind?
Yeah, I actually like what we've seen work is an asset that then blends into a community event. So an event that's not for positioning us as anything other than a community builder, it actually has worked pretty well. And I think you engage at more of a high level, and then you have these events and these community builders that engage at more of a mid-level, but still influential people. That's been working pretty well for us. I think the other thing I was going to comment, just based on what you just said, is in thinking about the maturity, I think we're all in the place of, we know that just putting the prospect's name in an ad isn't enough anymore. We're beyond that. So I think everything here, there's the novelty wears off pretty quickly because there is so much more of this going on. So it's something that we're focused on trying to, again, mix these different tactics and these different approaches and make sure it matches the personas that we're trying to.
It kind of gets to this, hand in hand with this trend of our customers are only looking at a few, is the bar keeps getting higher, in part because we're all doing ABM now, right? And so they're getting bombarded with pretty good content and pretty good messaging and invitations to interesting events. And so we have to continue to get more personalized, more relevant. Daniel, what about you? Favorite tactic?
It's got to be direct mail.
Aha, tell us why, direct mail.
I think direct mail for a long time was the ugly stepchild, and it's come back, and we're doing things with it that tie the digital and the physical presences together, and we're able to track that digital presence through direct mail and then vice versa. And so we see it as a very effective channel for us, but we try to integrate it whenever possible, and it's fun. I mean, who doesn't like thinking of direct mail campaigns?
Excellent. Okay, so from the fun back to the hard stuff. So you guys are all building programs, and we've touched on selecting accounts, working with sales, what kind of tools and tactics. There are a lot of organizational issues. Michelle, you talked about meetings. I mean, there are a lot of pieces that you also use the term orchestration, that we're trying to orchestrate here to really go forward at scale across the organization with sales. So I'm going to ask, what's the toughest organizational challenge? Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd actually put them in two buckets for us. One is privacy and thinking through what we start to execute on, what we build into the programs in the face of GDPR and the California legislation and beyond. So making sure that we're in front of that strategically and not painting ourselves into a corner with tactics that we won't be able to continue or that we'll need to adapt going forward. The other piece is in line with that, but it's having and maintaining core principles for what these programs are meant to do, as you alluded to before, while also living in a constant state of change. So adapting as we go with kind of the core principles in mind. I think in making sure that the team, sales, SDRs, marketing, doesn't chase the shiny objects away from the principles that we have. So.
Right, good. Michelle, what about for you? What are some of the toughest challenges organizationally?
Yeah, I'd say to add to that, I think we as marketers and sales teams, the people represented in this room, I think we all understand the value that ABM can deliver to the business. I think we all agree directionally it's the right thing to do, and it's going to accelerate the sales cycle, have larger deal sizes, things like that. But setting expectations at the executive level can be challenging, right? You're given a lot of resources, a budget, people, time, et cetera. There's an expectation for results very quickly, and ABM, particularly if you're going after larger accounts, larger deal sizes, that's going to take time. You're not going to see, they're used to the days of, here marketing, I gave you some money, tell me next month how much you brought back in. That's not the case here. This is a slow burn. It can take months, if not years, depending on the sales cycle and the cost of whatever it happens to be that you're marketing. And so maintaining expectations and patience, I think, is probably one of the bigger challenges today with this. Right
Not
now.
easy. We're reorging every year. Right. Okay. Daniel, how about for you? Biggest challenges?
I think the biggest challenge for us is just making sure we're managing all the moving pieces. And I think you touched on it earlier. There's so much that goes into our ABM campaigns. And all the different channels we're going to market through and the messages we're trying to deliver at the right time to the right person, it gets complex. And so making sure that we are doing the right things at the right time to the right person at the right account is challenging. But I think we manage it well, but it is something we have to actively manage.
You wouldn't be on stage.
Right.
Okay, so now we get to the dreaded, and perfect segue here. Patience is a virtue. You had this, right? So we know from research, from our clients, from our friends and partners, that the payoff can be quite substantial with account-based marketing. You see some data here from that same benchmark study I mentioned. 3/4 of companies doing ABM are achieving significantly more ROI from their ABM program than all other marketing programs, almost half double the ROI. And you can see some of the other metrics around customer success, references and advocates, collaborative innovation. We're all trying to innovate, often with our key clients. So we know the payoff can be substantial, and yet it takes time. And so sometimes showing those interim metrics can be especially important. So I'm going to go back down the line and ask, how are you actually proving success? What are the key metrics that you're using at a business level? Michelle.
Yeah, so some of the KPIs we look at are things like engagement. If, let's say, we have a program, we're going after 400 accounts, we'll set targets that say within 3 months we want to have engaged at least 80% of those accounts. And by engaged, we mean they're responding to our campaigns, they're signing up for webinars, they're downloading content, whatever that engagement level means. We look at, are we accelerating the sales cycle in the form of, are the leads qualifying sooner, faster, better? Are we seeing a compression of the sales cycle, which can be challenging if you have a 12-month sales cycle, but at least you can look at some of the early, like the leading indicators on some of those KPIs around MQLs, SQLs, things like that. As it's making its way down the journey, is that going faster than the more traditional ways that we've been doing marketing? I will say occasionally people will say pipeline doesn't pay anybody's paychecks, bookings pay people's paychecks. I contend with that every day. That being said, there are some leading indicators that we point to that I think help sell the value of ABM and make it clear that a little bit of patience is needed for the longer term payoff.
That's great. Daniel, how about you? What are the key metrics you're looking at?
Quite literally taking the words out of my mouth. For us, it's very much around the acceleration or the progression of that lead into the sales funnel, and then from the sales funnel, how do we support that through to revenue? The quantity of leads we generate is obviously an important engagement we see. Ultimately, though, it comes back to a yield target and how much we get from what we invest. So.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, similar story for us. I think for us, I see it as a percentage of conversion to a conversation, and it may, just like anybody else, it may proceed down the pipeline, it may not. But for us, timing is so important with these accounts that we will have a meaningful conversation and inform them of what we do today, what we're going to do in the future, and make sure that they understand us for when the timing is right for them. So we have a percentage of conversion that's the target to essentially a sales qualified conversation.
That's good. I'm gratified. I mean, we've seen an uptick just in the last year or two of engagement metrics, as leading indicators. But the other piece of that is we're often looking for long-term relationships. We're looking for customer lifetime value, not just the next deal. So love to hear all of that. All right, we are turning into pumpkins in a minute. So final thoughts, words of wisdom for the audience. Nick, what's a last key takeaway for folks?
I've always, now that since ABM tactics and practices are becoming more and more prevalent, I just pay attention to what people are pitching me and take some ideas out of the ones that get all the way into my inbox and make me follow through. I can learn a few things from that and learn what not to do too. There's certainly examples of that.
Oh, that's great. Daniel?
I think it's easy for us to focus on the campaigns and the tactics and everything else, but having a team behind you who can own ABM as a function, the successes, the failures, the learnings, and share them is absolutely critical. I mean, Steph and Brittany are in the audience today, and they're two of the people on my team who do that, and they do it very, very well. And they make sure that all of the moving pieces are moved in the right way. The other part I'd quickly add is your vendor. I mean, we have a multitude of vendors from our ABM tactics, but it's all underpinned by Triblio for us. And knowing that we can call them outside of the product features, but we can call them for customer service. And we have weekly calls with them where we talk about our tactics and our strategies and things like that. So for us, having a partner like that is absolutely critical as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Michelle?
Yeah, and I'd say remember that it's an evolution, not a revolution, right? This is going to happen. There's going to be incremental forward progress. You always just have to keep focusing. It would be nice if we could just flip a switch and suddenly this would all work. But I think the reality is it's going, like everything else in marketing, it's going to take time. You know, honestly, it's going to be the people right here in this room over the next 5 years. There is no normal yet for ABM. There is no normal. You know, I'm hearing there's new teams, revenue operations teams forming, and orchestration teams. You know, within companies, there is no normal yet. It's the people in this room at conferences like this that are going to define the normal, so that 5 years from now, this will just be the way marketing gets done.
Yeah. Michelle, thank you. That's a fabulous note to end on. Huge thanks to our panelists, Nick Wassenberg, Daniel Sims, Michelle Lero. And let's continue the conversation. We all have a lot to learn from each other, so we look forward to keeping up the conversation. Thank you all.